close. Hey, and we are live. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to the BAMF podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lafferty. And here with me, haven't seen him in the daylight hours for a long time, is Mr. Jason Tondreau. Hey, Jason.
Hi. It's a real pleasure to be here. Good to see you again as well. And not just doing my Star Trek stuff on Saturdays.
Yeah, we should probably mention on Saturdays, Jason runs Space Force, one of our family of BAMF podcast shows where he and a couple of other smart guys dissect Star Trek media.
And the reason why I wanted to come on here when we were doing Mandalorian is because, I mean, Mandalorian and Star Trek Discovery are coming out basically a day apart now. And so it's very normal for me. I keep comparing the two. Like they're both kind of living in my headspace at the same time every week. So I can't help but compare the two.
We should talk about that because I've been wanting to check out Discovery. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah.
So, and directly below me in the Brady Bunch grid is Joe Brannigan. How you doing, Joe?
Doing well. How are you?
All right. I'm all right. Good to see you again, or good to see your icon again. And Joe runs the Nerf Herders Facebook group where we talk about all things Star Wars related and general geekery. And
yeah, that's pretty much my qualification is that I am the biggest Star Wars nerd ever.
That's a competition for that title. Joe.
There's no. I mean, the people who are above me. I know their names. Steven Sansweet and Grant Imahara was up there.
Yeah,
before he died, and I mean, I'm not seriously claiming that title. I'm just talking shit. But seriously, it's ridiculous.
That's right. We'll support.
I know things about Star Wars nobody needs to know.
Okay. Well, don't tell us because we don't need to know.
But are you writing fanfic? That's the line, right?
Not currently. I will not say that I never have.
At some point, I think every franchise becomes fanfic. I mean, we don't want to call it that, but if I read comic books a lot, which is how I met Jason doing superhero RPGs, which are based in comics because that's the roots. And especially reading DC comics lately, I'm like, oh, this is not my version of this character. Mm-hmm. Taking this in a direction I don't like. And it occurred to me, I have that same thought whenever I read a Star Wars comic from Marvel. I'm like, oh, and it's almost like when you're on a fanfic site and you're like, I don't like the way this author handles these characters. I'll go over here. And especially with
Marvel Star Wars had the best Darth Vader line ever.
It was.
I am surrounded by fear and dead men.
Exactly. The rebel says, give it up, Vader, you're surrounded. The only thing I am surrounded by is fear and dead men.
That was on Vader Down, right?
It was.
Yeah, they've done some really good stuff. They really have. I thought Dr. Aphra, when she started out, was amazing. I liked it when it was really dark British humor. When Kieran Gillen was writing it. Now it's more romantic comedy, Space Indiana Jones, which I'm less fond of, but I understand it still has its fans. So, but hey, go ahead.
I'm a huge fan of BT and 000, her droids.
Oh, that's what I mean. That dark British humor, the murderous, dark counterpoint to R2D2 and C3PO. So, but hey, Mandalorian Monday is the name of the show, and hey, there's Walt. Hey, Walt.
All I am surrounded by is fear and dead men. One of the greatest quotes ever. And that comic was badass. If you did not read that comic by Charles Soule, you must, because it is so good.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Hey, what's going on, Jason?
Yeah, we got Jason back for a daytime show. How about
that?
Jason's joining us from lunchtime at Paizo.
I'm actually playing hooky. Don't tell.
And once again, I am in envy of his glorious beard.
Oh, I only grew it back because it's gotten cold again. I shaved it all summer and spring, but then I'm like, my face is cold. Nature has a solution to this problem. Anyway, Mandalorian Monday.
Well, Walt, you just joined, so you can kick things off. Ice Spider episode. What'd you think?
The callback. The first of all, okay. Spoiler. If you have not seen this episode, stop watching now because we're going to rip some shit up. And I brought my Mandalorian hat again, so we know what's up. Right? So the fact that the X-Wing pilots were who they were, I was just all stupid and hysterical. Right? So But that aside, the spiders. I love Star Wars Rebels so much that I have all of the little Disney mini characters that they came out with. I have every one that's been produced up on my shelf. I love that series just because I think one of the greatest things that it teaches is because so many like cartoons and stuff like that, especially something that's drawn to kids with the style that it is, they teach all this like ooh and rainbows and unicorn giggles. Hey, Owen. I said, but the thing I really enjoyed about Star Wars Rebels is that it teaches loss and how to handle loss and how people can still go forward after loss. And I think in storytelling, it's a very, very big thing. But that aside, Star Wars Rebels has so much fun creatures and monsters from the Lolthcats, which start off in the first episode, to the wolves and stuff like that. But these spiders are epic, and the fact that they came from a Macquarie painting is just awesome. So Dave Filoni really does a good job of like mining the depths of all those really old things in canon. But
I think I'm sharing the Macquarie. That is Dark for Empire Strikes Back right there.
So if I can unpack that just a little bit,
Joe,
the Krykna that are on Chopper Base that look like that, they've been on. So the spiders from Rebels that look like that. One of the designers is on Twitter talking about that's not them. It's some kind of related species, and the actual story is. The designer from the episode and the designer from Rebels both based their thing on that Macquarie painting, but they're saying it's not the same species, which I call BS on. I think it's if not the same species, it's at least really close.
Right on.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that we just had another guest star show up. Wandering through the front door, just like Kramer on Seinfeld, we have Owen Casey Stevens. Also a Pathfinder, a Starfinder dev from back in the day. How you doing, Owen?
No, he's put in chat that he can't send to us. He can see and hear us, but he can't talk.
Oh, okay, shoot. Well, Owen says I'm good. All right, glad to see you. You're doing good, Owen. Maybe we can get the audio resolved.
Can I just say to Owen, I am a huge fan. Like your Rebel Lieutenant story literally brought me to tears when I watched it, and it's one of my favorite stories about Star Wars fandom. If you guys haven't heard it or seen it, you should do that.
Nice. Good.
I will find that story on YouTube and put a link in. Yeah, Owen says, here's my best gaming story. It's sort of like I'm the Owen Ouija board. Right?
So how about it, Jason? What did you think of the episode?
Well, I enjoyed it. I've been thinking about Mandalorian a lot, the way that it compares to Discovery, because I'm doing this Space Force thing, and they both come on at basically the same week at the same time. And so, for example, not this week's episode, but last week's when they fought the Krayt Dragon, both Discovery and Star Wars Mandalorian were doing a similar thing. They both had these two different cultures that kind of hated each other, but they get brought together by the protagonists to cooperate and make peace by the end. Discovery does that with like the player characters, the heroes, like getting shot at and martyring themselves in order to bring the two groups together and create peace. Mandalorian does it by getting everybody to team up and fight a giant monster, which is very Star Wars and Star Trek to me. It's like lawful good versus chaotic good, right? And it became very instrumental in sort of illustrating how the two settings are very different from one another.
Well, the Mandalorian's doing a very classic mythological quest structure.
Oh, sure.
He's doing the overall quest with the child is a very kind of Holy Grailish thing.
Well, and honestly, it's Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah.
You don't need me to say that. Like lots of people have figured that out. But as for this episode, I enjoyed it. I was struck by one thing. I've been saying for a long time that Mandalorian episodes are a great example of pretty much about as much content as you can fit into like one game session. Like if you think back to like previous episodes of Mandalorian, like the Prison Break episode, for example, or whatever, that was almost like a perfect template for a 3 to 4 hour gaming session. I felt this episode was the first one. I feel like it didn't actually have as much content as I wanted it to have. The whole X-Wing sequence goes on a bit long. There's basically only just kind of like one kind of action sequence there with all of this. I mean, it's a great sequence, don't get me wrong. But it would be a lot of role playing. If we were gamifying this episode, which of course is how I approach everything, if we were gamifying it, there'd be a lot of role play and like one great big action sequence at the end, and then we'd be a little short. It'd be a short episode. I'm not saying it was bad. I enjoyed it, but in contrast to the other episodes, it didn't seem quite as packed as full as some of the episodes we've seen.
This wouldn't be the episode that I would gamify because there aren't enough PCs.
Right. Although there's a increasing awareness and trend to make our games accessible to solo players, very small groups, and that kind of one-on-one experience, right? Like 5e put out in their starter kit rules for sidekicks, so that a parent can DM with their child, and their child can have an NPC that helps them out on for stuff in the adventure, and they're creating support for that, and that's because that's the way a lot of us are playing now. So Mandalorian as a solo game with maybe a few guest stars showing up once in a while is a very, very RPG-like experience.
And I would like to speak for Owen, if I may. Owen says, as a Star Wars RPG game designer, I love that The Mandalorian is popular, exciting, Star Wars as heck, and has no Jedi or Sith in it. And I violently agree with Owen on this, because one of my favorite things about this series has been the absence of Jedi or Sith, except in the occasional mention.
Well, there's a reason why Edge of Empire was the most popular of the Fantasy Flight Star Wars games, right? Why they put it out first. Because this kind of like shady gray area where everyone's playing smugglers and bounty hunters and criminals is a pretty popular element of the whole Star Wars setup. Yeah.
And there's a lot out there that doesn't have to be Jedi. I mean, I still say we're going to get into Revan before the end of it, but that will be incidental to, they will only get into Revan as he affects Mandalorian culture.
Well, the simple fact that we're carrying around a little baby Yoda means that the Jedi are forever present on the screen, even if we don't see a Jedi, right? Like, we see Force powers all the time in this show. It's just not a Jedi.
That is a good point. And Owen says, speaking to Jake's point about RPGs for small groups, Ron Lundeen has even done a whole solo adventure.
Yeah.
I will pull that up. Oh, Rogue Genius Games, Dustwalkers 2. All right, yeah.
And by the way, if it is an RPG, Baby Yoda is racking up those dark side points.
I'm pretty sure that I don't think Baby Yoda is actually a PC. Right? Because I don't think a player would probably actually play that character, but maybe.
I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but I was talking to a guy who's familiar with the White Star rule set for OSR, and we were talking about how we might put together a completely free fan project for the, looking at some of the Mandalorian characters.
Yeah.
And so Owen says, Baby Yoda is a hazard, a mobile trap you have to keep safe.
This is actually fits like if you think of the Lord of the Rings as a big giant escort quest, right? Where Frodo is an NPC and he's just the person you have to lead from one part. And Baby Yoda is basically like Frodo in that, right? He's the escort quest.
So, Owen, if you can type and let us know, what do you think of this episode? You loved it. Okay. Well, hey, Walt, what did you think?
I enjoyed it. I think that me personally, I would have liked to see this episode in a different spot. I know it's setting up the the going to the water planet and with the frog lady and possibly encountering other people. Like I think Sasha Banks is in the next episode. If she's Sabine, man, I'm gonna go mental. That's gonna be awesome. Because it was basically 2 monster hunts in a row, and I would have liked to have seen more interaction with like more than just Frog Lady. Although the android thing was a nice touch. I liked that she turned the android into a translator. That was
Yeah, that was good. I did like that.
So, do you remember where we saw her before?
No, have no idea.
Back in episode 5, when he picked up the kid at the bar, they did, and when he went to the bar looking for work, they did an establishing shot to show you all the patrons in the bar. And one of the establishing shots was the Frog Lady, and another one was the ant guy that was playing Savik.
Right on.
And Owen says, well, I put his comment up there in a horribly misspelled banner saying the episode does for Star Wars what the Marvel movies done for the superheroes. It shows you can have multiple genres of story in one framework. He also says, it also shows the writers understand that all toddlers are sociopaths, which is accurate. I've told this story too much in this podcast, but I went to pick up my kid when he was still a toddler, when he was still in diapers from daycare. And the teacher said, you need to talk to your son. I'm like, well, he doesn't speak yet. He's pretty like, well, I was changing another kid's diaper. And he climbed a little ladder onto the changing table, looked up at me, he smiled, looked at the other kid on the table, and he smiled. And then he punched him right in the ear. I'm like, I'll have words with him on the way home. I'll do that.
I actually was I wasn't sure what to make of the whole Baby Yoda eating the woman's frog eggs.
That bothered a lot of reviewers. At least a handful that I've read.
I just kept thinking, is this like some sort of plot issue? Like, are they going to make this a thing? But I guess it's just supposed to be sort of a running joke, but I didn't find it very funny.
I don't think it's a joke at all. I think it's actually a dangerous thing that's building up over time. I think it's he's kind of flirting towards the dark side. Remember, he force choked Cara Dune at one point?
Yeah.
I think he's seen a lot of death and conflict and stuff, and he has no influence to kind of steer him away from that. So I think those are signs of the storm clouds gathering.
I mean, he's a baby, right? So there's got to be a lot of risk in a child like that having the Force. Like, that's got to be a known concern amongst Force users.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I used to find the younglings when they were young, I guess, to prevent stuff like that. But I honestly could see it just being a kind of a joke that fell flat, because first episode was all about Baby Yoda. He likes to eat everything. Isn't it funny? He's eating frogs, eating more frogs. Look, and then that was kind of like there were 2 things Baby Yoda did. One was look cute on camera. Okay, 3. Cute on camera, occasionally use the Force. 3, eat every goddamn thing he could.
Yeah.
So that might be a bit. I don't know. I think Joe could be right though, because there's got to be a lot of plot happening this season, right?
You think? I mean, more than we got last season, certainly. But we'll see.
Telling you, he's racking up those dark side points, and sooner or later, those got to pay off.
All right. So, Owen, you want to do our Owen Ouija board, Mike? Or he's already typing it in. There you go. Okay.
Yeah. As a series, I also like that the Mandalorian can turn Mandalorian into a PC class. Any species could be adopted as one. You start with iffy armor, no flight pack, no symbol.
Yeah.
As you gain character levels, you pick up these things as class features. And Yoda's species may have established the too old to begin the training line because children of that species go dark fast.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a good point.
Yeah. Owen's point about making the bounty hunt, the Mandalorian thing into, I don't know if I would go so far as a class, but because I think bounty hunter is a pretty straightforward class, but maybe Mandalorian is like an archetype or a prestige class or whatever you want to call it, right? Like it's something you level into when you've got a few levels of bounty hunter already.
Mm.
But your point about being able to make it something that any PC race can be is huge. Like as game designers, we always want to try to make as many player options as possible. We want to give players lots and lots of choices. And being able to make any species into a Mandalorian, yeah, you're right. That's a great example of good game design, even though they're not making a game. They're making a setting.
Isn't there? Never mind. But so what do we think happens next episode? They're getting to Trask.
There's one thing from the Crate Dragon episode that I didn't say that I wanted to come back to.
Please.
His sidearm. I am 90% sure that Cobb Vanth's sidearm is Luke's pistol. Remember in Jabba's throne room, Luke pulls a gun on Jabba from somebody's holster, and it's then taken away from him?
Yeah.
90% sure that's the gun Cobb Vanth is shooting miners with. And that fits because
it's Luke's pistol for like a fraction of a second, you mean?
Right. Luke like puts his hand on it.
Yeah.
But this fits because he has Boba Fett's armor. He has Anakin's pod racer engine. The Force is feeding him useful equipment because his cause is just.
And just to shake the magic Owen 8 ball, and here's our latest comment. And if you're the Marshal from Justified, which is Cobb Vanth, you take the Bounty Hunter class, take the Mandalorian Armor class feature without being a Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So that.
And Dan Doherty was the. Remember you asked about the bartender?
Yeah.
He was Dan Doherty. Under all that makeup, he was Dan Doherty.
Who is Dan Doherty? I'm sorry.
The bartender in Deadwood.
Oh! That is, they're leaning into the space western thing so hard. I'm really digging it. Oh, hey, Walt has a picture. Hang on. What we got here? Oh, shit. What is that?
His name is W. Earl Brown.
That's the gun that's Cobb Vanth holding his gun from that episode, from the Crate Dragon episode.
You know, that's really interesting because I remember how the guns in Firefly specifically were vintage firearms rather than sci-fi props. And it's interesting to see that get done again in Star Wars. Do they do this a lot in Star Wars, guys? Do they use a bunch of old?
Oh yeah, the originals they didn't even modify. They just they basically just put them on screen like the Stormtrooper blaster. That one was modified because that was a German grease gun.
Yep.
You know,
and
but like
the Bosk suit, the part of Bosk that isn't a lizard is straight out of a 1969 Doctor Who costume. It was on the Doctor Who, like you can find it on Netflix.
Interesting.
The great thing about Doctor Who is that if you're a fan making costumes or cosplay for Doctor Who, you have just about the same budget Doctor Who had originally back in the day.
Yeah.
And
Owen
notes that Han Solo's pistol was a slightly changed broom handle Mauser. And
right. Yeah, that's really recognizable.
And there were a lot of like lenses and photography equipment that ended up as lightsabers and stuff.
And Owen points out the Pod Racer's hover bike was a perfect Easter egg. It doesn't change the plot or scene at all. You don't have to know it. It makes perfect sense, but it's cool for fans who see it. So says Owen.
This is that Cobbs was riding a hover bike. Riding a Pod Racer engine.
He had taken one of Anakin's engine and bolted his seat on the side of it, and he was riding that around.
Yeah.
Cobb Vanth isn't quite just surrounded by relics from earlier installments in the franchise, but he's darn close.
Pretty close, yeah.
So, yeah. All right, so I'm getting close to where I have to disappear for a meeting, but I think we've had a good show. Any closing thoughts, guys? Owen? Anybody?
We need to get what we can do is next time, Owen, I'll give you my phone number. You call me and we'll put you in the speaker in the background so that way we can hook this up. We have the technology.
I'm really enjoying Mandalorian and I enjoyed the first season a lot. Like a lot of us were really kind of frustrated with the way Star Wars had been going, and we even asked ourselves, are we even Star Wars fans anymore? And Mandalorian really kind of brought a lot of us home. And I'm enjoying the show a lot. It's getting me good Star Wars stories with in the genre and mode and tone that I want Star Wars to be. Everybody's got their own version of Star Wars, but this feels like my Star Wars.
Yeah.
And Owen says this is the best thing to hit Star Wars since Empire.
Yeah.
The minute they solidly go to Rebels, the minute they bust out Sabine or Barris or any of those people, you'll hear me yelling from Colorado.
The music is great. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally.
Is it weird that it seems like both Star Wars and Star Trek are kind of on win-back footings? Like, with Discovery, with Mandalorian, they're kind of saying to the fans, hey, we're sorry about all that. How about this?
Well, you're going to see something very interesting happen when Star Wars' other series start. We know that there's another Star Wars series in development.
At least two.
Yeah. And you're seeing this in Star Trek where Discovery and Picard and Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks, they're all very different Star Trek shows. They intentionally are grabbing different pieces of the Star Trek lore and different kinds of Star Trek. They are not trying to be all things to all fans. And I'm very interested to see what happens when that happens with Star Wars as well. So, like, okay, we're getting this bounty hunter space western. What's the other Star Wars show going to be, plural, Star Wars shows, that aren't like this? I'm looking forward to seeing that. I don't want Mandalorian to have to carry all of Star Wars by itself. I want it to be able to just be its own thing and not be responsible for the whole show.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the Kenobi show.
One of them, the one headed by Lindsay Headley, I think her name is billed as a quote martial arts drama. So I'm right there for that. Sign me up.
Yeah. All right. I really do have to disappear in about 110 seconds to go jump on this other Zoom call. But Owen, the last word. Let's see. Owen says, also the music. They managed to make music that fits perfectly without just being known themes over and over.
Yep.
I feel like we're looking at Rogue One with that comment, but okay. Massive franchises will always have hits and misses. Thank goodness there are hits. And a lot can be traced back to how the Marvel Cinematic Universe handles things. No surprise given who was involved in Mandalorian. Fair enough with Jon Favreau. And all right, cool. I think that's a good place to end things. Joe, Jason, Owen, Walt, thanks for coming out, guys. Really appreciate your time.
Always pleasure.
And Owen says Rogue One is the third best thing to hit Star Wars since Empire. Fair enough. All right, guys, I got to go be corporate. I'll talk to at least one of you in a couple hours, and the rest of you, I'll see you later. Take care.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye. Thanks for being on, Owen.